This does not want to move. Ugh. Guess I'm stuck here. Alright, what is up guys? Charles here. Welcome back to another beautiful evening in Palo Alto, California. It's been a while. How are you guys doing? Let me know in the comments. As for how I'm doing, I'm basically getting down to the point in the season where we're almost at the season finale, for the NCAA circuit. But what I realized and what I was thinking about is it's pretty hard to follow. I know it's pretty hard to follow track and field sometimes. It's difficult sometimes to see someone as a culmination of a season if you don't fully, know what went down in that season. So I wanted to give you guys a recap of sort of, what I've been doing the last couple months, give you guys sort of a narrative or a clearer picture of the build-up and what it looks like to be an NCAA athlete, heading into the NCAA championships. Because I believe that track and field is a sport that's best watched when you sort of have a dog in the fight, so to speak. Shout out Stevie Visuals. We'll have some footage from the season to splice in between, but basically the goal will be to recap it as best I can as a prelude to one of the best meets of the year, I think. Without further ado, let's get started. Basically, this season started in indoor season, which was a bit of a tough one for me. I made it to nationals. I was a second team All-American. I would love to be a first team All-American and finish better, but the goal was to train off of cross country. I'm always trying to get better in the sport and try and focus myself up for the races I want to be best at. So there's a bit of sacrifice there in terms of how much I was putting in at the time. And at this point in the season, I feel incredible. So I'm glad that I put in the work, but I had to have a lot of belief, coming off that indoor season that, things were going to bounce back up. And so I wanted to get off to a good start. I was feeling a lot of energy, and that leads us into our first outdoor meet, which was the Stanford Invitational on my home track. The goal was pretty much for Kai and myself to get a locked regionals time for the 10K. Basically, to summarize it very quickly, to qualify for the national meet at NCAA's, you first have to qualify for regionals, which means you're the top 48 for athletes either in the West or the East of the nation. For myself, I'm in California, so I'm in the West. So you usually base that off of previous years. We believed, what was in our wheelhouse and what would be pretty much guaranteed to go to regionals would be around 28-20, somewhere in that vicinity. So that's what Kai and I were going for. We had Brian Fay pacing us. He did an incredible job, and then Kai and I took the lead. While I was trying to just, keep my head down and go for a regional qualifier, there's just times where you get so fired up, caught up in the energy of it all, and I really just went for it, and we ended up breaking 28, which was a very good time. It was the US #1 time when we raced it, and it ended up being the US #1 for the NCAA at the end of the season too. Kai and I ran sub 28. That was awesome. Ended up winning the race. The home crowd was unbelievable. All sorts of crazy stuff was happening. Danny Duncan came down to watch the race. So it was just a very electric weekend. It was a great way to start the season. I was trying to get that bounce back energy. Didn't get too down on myself, that I was comfortable with the sacrifices I'd made, to train at a high level and that it was gonna pay off. It was really a gratifying experience to race that fast. Yeah, that was a great start. Then the next race, not quite as exciting. We did a much better job of actually just going for a regionals qualifier in the 5K, which was, we ended up running about 13:33. Very conservative. I wore racing flats to save the legs a lot better. And Kai, very kindly volunteered. He actually ended up doing like a double threshold day because he worked out in the morning, then volunteered to pace myself in the 5K later. Helped me get that regionals qualifier, ran mid 13:30s. That pretty much guarantees me having a 5K regionals qualifier, so I could just race, however I wanted for the rest of the season. And that was something that was really great to have. Then we moved on to our dual meet with Cal Berkeley. And this meet, it's an interesting one. Because a lot of our other meets are more distance oriented, but this one, it doesn't have quite the distance events we usually race, and it's just us and Cal, which is pretty different from how a lot of college racing goes. But it's always a fun time, me and the guys, just trying to get as many points as we can in a dual meet setting. I ended up getting smoked in the 1500, ended up third, but then I came back, won the 3K later. It was good racing, just kind of a bounce week between that 5K and Pac12s, but yeah, it was a fun time. The next race was the Pac12 Championships. This one's kind of tough for me. It was a really interesting race. I knew Brian Fay was in it. He has an incredible kick, very fast 5K. I knew I'm more of a distance guy, so I did my absolute best to make it a moderately fast race, but didn't want to go out too aggressively and not be able to finish. I think I held back a little bit more than I should have probably, you know, so I was pushing the pace, you know, in a conservative way. Then going into the last lap, he just absolutely bolted past me. I was trying to hold on as best I could. He comes around the last 200. I'm holding on. I think I'm getting him, but I just didn't have the runway. And he just dropped an absolutely incredible last lap. I think he ran 54 something. I ran 55 low. Yeah, and it was a tough one, you know, because obviously he wanted to win the Pac-12 10K. That's the start of championship season, but that's life sometimes. That's how racing and training goes. Ended up closing out a really solid week of training on top of it all, which I'm now getting to enjoy. But it's always a pleasure to be in those kinds of races, racing amazing competition, and that's why I love it. So at the end of the day, you know, sometimes you just gotta take the result and keep moving forward. So the next and final meet at this point for the version of me that's talking to you right now is the regional qualifier, which is the meet we've been trying to get to, which a lot of people are trying to get to all season. And if you place top 12 in this meet, then you get an automatic ticket to nationals. So the goal is to place top 12, and it's a very interesting and unique meet because it's one of the only ones where 12th place is just as good as first. So the tactics all get mixed up. You got really good guys who are being a lot more conservative than they usually are. You have guys who are maybe a bit more on the fringe that are really extending themselves to put themselves in a good position to just get one of those spots. And watching them all clash it's really fun because it's a lot more complicated, I think, than championship racing where everyone just wants to win. So we get into the 10K. It's kind of going pretty sluggishly, pretty slow. This time last year, it would go fast and slow, and the group would spread out and then squeeze, and then spread out and then squeeze. And whenever it would slow down and compress together, it got really dangerous and people were tripping. It was chaotic, and it got to the point where this guy fell right in front of me and I actually went down. Luckily, I landed on my hands and knees, was able to spring myself back up, finish the race and get, I think, 10th maybe. That was a crazy experience, and you know, it was one of the hardest races I've ever run because the pack went away from me. I think there were 2 laps left when it happened, and I was just like, I'm not doing this again. So I went to the front, and then I felt my teammate Kai, you know, catch up to me very quickly. Then we traded off, you know, every 500 meters or so, stretched the field out, and then had a pretty conservative finish. Secured the placements we needed to get. I ended up 6th in the 10K. It was 28:22, which is what I ran for 6th place, and I think the previous record was 28:40 something. So it was a lot faster than that meet usually is. Kai and I in the middle made it a very honest effort, which was fun. The only thing we had to do next was lock up and get ready for the 5. The 5 is 2 days later, so you get an off day and then you race the 5,000. So it's pretty difficult because a lot of guys that you're competing against are fresh. Also, something that's really interesting, so I mentioned there's 12 spots earlier for the 10K. There's still 12 spots for the 5K, but it's split up into 2 heats. They're randomly assigned through some snaking mechanism, but essentially you have 5 guaranteed in each heat, and then the next 2 fastest guys from either heat go through. And in all the times I've been here, the second heat always gets those 2 extra spots because they're able to watch the first heat and then just pace the race to be slightly faster, or if not a lot faster. So I knew that going in, and I knew the first heat tends to be very tactical because people are nervous. A lot of us are tired from the 10K. So I didn't know how I was gonna feel. And I also knew I had a really tough time with it last year. So I was a little nervous. But I get into the race, I feel really great, and it starts pretty fast, which is a good sign because the faster you go, the more likely you might have those extra spots. But then it starts to slow down a little bit, maybe in the middle, and then my teammate Kai just shoots out, and this athlete Jackson Sharp is just right behind him. And they make a huge gap from us in a very short amount of time. And I end up starting to lead that sort of second pack. We're kind of going around, and I noticed we're starting to close the gap a little bit with Jackson Sharp particularly. And we got a couple laps left to play with. I just kind of keep my eyes locked on his back, just grind away. Don't even think about who's behind me. Check the Jumbotron every once in a while to see if I can count how many guys are there. You know, trusting I had enough runway to get there. And then with 2 laps to go, I think I latched right behind Sharp. He put a good lap in. And then I think we were able to put in just a very smooth last lap. Ended up running 13:26, which is like just 4 seconds off my PR. So it was a phenomenal race, very fast, very quick, and it felt incredible, especially for doubling back from the 10K. That's something I feel really good about, you know, at this point going into the next part of the season, especially given how last year was very difficult for me. So all around, a lot to be excited about. You know, I've trained and I've trained and I've trained for this next week. I don't know how it's gonna go, but I know I put the work in, and sometimes that's all you can do. Now the only thing that's left is execution, and I think if you really, really, really want it as an athlete, you know, that part usually takes care of itself. So I'm feeling confident, you know, I'm sleeping well, and yeah, I'm just excited to get out there because you know, I think with the anxiousness of high level performance, it can kind of get prohibitive in a sense where you feel so nervous you almost don't want to be out there. And I try to remind myself a lot that this is something that, you know, it is scary at first, but when you're in it, it's so much fun. It's so enjoyable. It's the reason why we do it. And so I'm keeping that in mind. I can't wait to get out to Austin. If you guys are there, feel free to say hi. I ran into so many of you throughout the season and regionals, and it's so awesome just to meet you guys. But that's pretty much it. That's been my season so far. I guess we'll see how it ends up. I'm gonna do my best to get this video out before I race next Wednesday, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you guys for hanging with me. Till next time, I'll see you when I see you. See you guys.